At hospital my daughter whispered, "Don't wake up. Dad left everything to us." I am lying here with my eyes closed and I can hear every single word she is saying. My name is Eleanor. I am 76 years old. I have lived long enough to watch sunrises turn into sunsets, to bury a husband, to raise children with my own two hands when those hands were still soft and steady. I have seen things in this life that broke me and I rebuilt myself every single time. But nothing, not one moment in all my 76 years, nothing prepared me for what I heard 3 minutes ago. I am in a hospital bed. Room 414. The machines beside me are beeping slow and steady. There is a tube in my arm and the blanket over my legs is thin and scratchy and smells like bleach. My eyes are closed because I was sleeping, genuinely sleeping, until I heard the door open and heard the sound of heels on the floor, and heard my daughter Vanessa's voice float across the room like smoke. She did not check on me. She did not whisper my name. She did not touch my hand. The first thing she said was to someone on the phone. "She looks the same. Still out. Listen, I just need you to tell me how long these things take. Because Harrison already signed everything before he passed, and I need to know when I can move forward." Harrison, my son-in-law, her husband of 22 years. He passed 4 days ago. 4 days. And she is standing 3 feet from my hospital bed talking about moving forward. I keep my eyes closed. My breathing stays the same. Slow. Even. I learned something when I was young, and that lesson is sitting with me right now in this cold hospital room like an old friend. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let people believe you cannot hear them. She moves closer. I can smell her perfume. It is the expensive kind, the kind Harrison used to buy her every anniversary because he thought it made her happy. I wonder now if anything ever truly made Vanessa happy, or if she just took things and kept moving. She lowers her voice but not enough. "Nathaniel is flying in tomorrow. I need everything handled before he gets here. You know how he is. He will start asking questions and I cannot deal with that right now." Nathaniel. My grandson. Harrison's nephew. The one boy in this entire family who has his grandfather's eyes and his grandfather's heart. He is 29 years old and he is flying here from Seattle and Vanessa does not want him to arrive before she has handled everything. I file that away. I keep my breathing even. She walks to the window. I hear her heels stop. I hear the blinds shift like she is looking out at the parking lot below. Then I hear her say something that turns my blood to ice water. "Just make sure the paperwork goes through tonight. She is not going to wake up anyway. The doctor said it could be days. And by the time she does, if she does, it will all be done. If she does. If I do." My own daughter is standing in my hospital room saying if I wake up it will not matter because by then everything will already be finished. By then the paperwork will be done. By then whatever Harrison signed before he died will already be processed, and I will have nothing left to fight with and nowhere left to stand. I breathe in. I breathe out. I do not open my eyes. She ends the call. She walks back to my bed. I feel the air shift as she leans close and she whispers it right next to my ear, so quiet no nurse would catch it. "Don't wake up, Mom. Dad left everything to us. It is better for everyone if you just stay asleep a little longer." Then she straightens up. I hear her pick up her bag. I hear her heels cross the floor. I hear the door open and close behind her. And then I am alone in room 414 with the machines beeping and the bleach smell and the thin blanket and I open my eyes for the first time in 20 minutes. And I stare at the white ceiling above me and I think about everything I know and everything I do not know yet and everything I am about to find out. I am 76 years old. I have been underestimated before. That was always their first mistake. I was brought to this hospital 5 days ago because my heart did something it was not supposed to do. The doctors called it a cardiac event. I called it my body throwing a fit because I had been running on grief and no sleep ever since Harrison collapsed in our kitchen on a Tuesday morning with a piece of toast still in his hand. Harrison was not just my son-in-law. He was the kind of man who showed up. When my husband Gerald died 11 years ago, it was Harrison who drove 4 hours to be at my side before any of my own children arrived. It was Harrison who sat with me in the funeral home and held my hand while I picked out a casket. It was Harrison who called me every Sunday for a year afterwards just to make sure I had eaten something and laughed at something and remembered that the world was still worth being in. He was a good man. And someone in this family did not deserve him. Vanessa met Harrison when she was 24 years old. He was tall and a little awkward, and he brought flowers from an actual florist, shook my hand with both of his, looked me in the eye and said it was an honor to meet the woman who raised Vanessa. I trusted him before I even knew his last name. Over the years I watched them build a life together. Harrison's business grew from one commercial property into a portfolio people in 3 counties knew about. He paid for my knee surgery when insurance refused. He sent Nathaniel to college. He bought his mother a new car every 4 years without being asked. And he loved Vanessa. God help him, he loved her even when she made it hard. Because Vanessa was always the one in our family who wanted more. More space. More things. More recognition. I am her mother and I know her better than anyone. And I say this not with cruelty, but with the kind of clarity that comes from watching someone your whole life. Vanessa was never satisfied. She had a beautiful home and she wanted a bigger one. She had a good husband and she spent 2 years trying to convince him to sell everything and move to a different city, because she had decided their neighborhood was no longer impressive enough. Harrison never sold. Harrison stayed. And then 3 weeks ago Harrison started talking to me. Not about the business. Not about money. About Vanessa. He called me on a Thursday evening and his voice was different. Quieter. More careful. He said he needed to tell me something and he needed me to just listen before I said anything. I sat down at my kitchen table and I listened. He said he had found things. Documents. Transfers. He said money had been moving out of accounts he did not recognize for almost 2 years. He said he had hired someone to look into it quietly and what came back was not what he expected. He said he was not ready to tell me everything yet because he was still trying to understand it himself, but he wanted me to know that he was going to be making some changes to his estate planning. He said he was meeting with Gideon, his lawyer, the following week. He asked me not to say anything to anyone. I promised him I would not. 6 days later he was on the kitchen floor with a piece of toast in his hand. And now I am in room 414 and Vanessa is outside this building making phone calls about paperwork and Nathaniel is on a plane from Seattle. And I am the only person in this entire situation who knows what Harrison told me on that Thursday evening. I press the call button beside my bed. Takes 3 minutes for Celeste to come in. She is the nurse who has been assigned to me since I arrived and I like her because she does not talk to me like I am fragile. She is maybe 35, with her hair pinned back and a small silver cross at her throat and the kind of calm that comes from years of watching people at their worst and still choosing to show up every shift. Mrs. Eleanor, she says, coming around to my side. You are awake. How are you feeling? I need my phone, I say. And I need you to close the door. She looks at me for a moment. Then she closes the door. She finds my phone in the drawer of the bedside table and hands it to me. Are you all right? She asks. I will be, I say. But I need 10 minutes alone and I need you to make sure no one comes into this room. Not a doctor. Not a family member. No one. Can you do that for me? Celeste looks at me with those calm eyes and she says, I can give you 15. She closes the door behind her. I look at my phone. My hands are not as steady as they used to be, but they are steady enough. I go to my contacts and I find the number I have been carrying in my phone for 3 weeks, ever since Harrison gave it to me at the end of that Thursday phone call. He said, just in case. He said, I know it sounds dramatic, but just in case anything happens before I get everything sorted, I want you to have this number. I thought he meant in case he had a stroke. I thought he meant in case something medical happened to him before he could update his paperwork. I did not think he meant in case he died in his kitchen 6 days later. I dial the number. It rings twice. A man answers. His voice is careful and professional and I recognize it because I have a good memory and I only need to hear something once to hold on to it. Gideon, I say. This is Eleanor, Harrison's mother-in-law. I think it is time for us to have that conversation Harrison told me you two were going to have. There is a pause on the other end. Then Gideon says, Mrs. Eleanor, I was wondering when you would call. Harrison told me you might. He said if he was not the one to call me first, to wait for you. I close my eyes. Harrison, you careful, brilliant, wonderful man. Tell me everything, I say. What Gideon tells me over the next 12 minutes changes every single thing I thought I understood about the last 2 years of my daughter's marriage. Harrison had known for 8 months. He suspected longer. What he found was not just money missing from accounts. It was a second phone. A man whose name I do not recognize. Hotel receipts going back 18 months. A transfer of $240,000 from a joint account into one that only Vanessa's name was on. Harrison did not confront her. Instead, he went to Gideon. He updated his will. He set up a trust. He structured things in a way that protected what he had built and made sure that the people he wanted to take care of were taken care of regardless of what happened next. He left Vanessa what she was legally entitled to as his spouse. But the rest, the properties, the portfolio, the accounts he had built from nothing, he restructured everything. And the primary beneficiary of that restructured trust was not Vanessa. It was me. Gideon says Harrison's exact words in the meeting were, "My mother-in-law is the only person in my life who never asked me for anything and never expected anything, and she is the only one I fully trust to do the right thing with what I have built. I am sitting in a hospital bed with a tube in my arm, and I am 76 years old and I am crying. Quietly. The way I have always cried, like I am trying not to bother anyone with it." He filed it. I ask, "It is legal?" "It is done. It was filed and certified 3 weeks ago," Gideon says. "Before he passed. Whatever Vanessa is trying to do with any paperwork right now, she cannot change what Harrison set up. The trust is ironclad. I made sure of it personally." I wipe my face with the edge of the bleach-smelling blanket. "She said Harrison left everything to us," I say. "She was standing in this room and she said Dad left everything to us. She does not know." "No," Gideon says. "She does not know yet. She will have to be formally notified. That process begins the moment I file the death certificate, which I can do as early as tomorrow." "Nathaniel," I say. "Harrison's nephew. He is flying in tomorrow." "I know," Gideon says. "Harrison told me about Nathaniel. There is something in the trust for him as well. Harrison thought of everyone." "Of course he did. Of course he did." I ask Gideon to file everything first thing tomorrow morning. He says he will be at the office by 8. I thank him and I end the call and I sit with the phone in my lap and I look at the door of room 414 and I think about my daughter standing on the other side of that door in the parking lot making calls about paperwork that has already been handled by a man she underestimated. She underestimated him. And then she came in here and she underestimated me. I press the call button again. Celeste comes back in 2 minutes. "How are you feeling?" she asks. "Better than I have felt in days," I say. "I think I would like to try eating something tonight." She smiles like she is genuinely pleased. "That is a very good sign." "Celeste," I say, "if my daughter comes back tonight, I would like to see her. Please make sure they send her up." "Of course." "And tomorrow," I say, "I expect my grandson will be here. Please make sure he knows which room I am in the moment he arrives." "I will let the front desk know." She moves to check my monitors and I watch her and I think about Harrison and I think about Gerald before him and I think about every moment in my life when someone looked at me and saw only what they wanted to see. A quiet woman. An old woman. A woman lying in a hospital bed with her eyes closed. People have always made the same mistake with me. They think quiet means unaware. They think still means finished. Vanessa comes back at 8:30 that evening. I hear her before I see her. The heels, the speed of her walk, the way she pushes the door open like she owns whatever room she walks into. She has always walked like that. Even as a little girl she walked like every room was already hers. She stops when she sees my eyes open. "Mom." She recovers quickly. She always does. She comes to the side of the bed and she puts her hand over mine and her expression arranges itself into concern the way a costume arranges itself over a body. "You are awake. How are you feeling?" "Sit down, Vanessa." Something flickers across her face. She sits in the chair beside my bed. I look at her for a long moment. My daughter. 51 years old. Still beautiful in the way she has always been beautiful. The kind of beauty that is assembled every morning with great care and precision. Her hair is perfect. Her clothes are perfect. Even tonight, the night after her husband's funeral, she is put together in a way that makes me think she spent time in front of a mirror before she came here. "How was the service?" I ask. "I was not at the funeral. I was here." "It was fine," she says. "A lot of people came. Harrison had a lot of friends." "Yes." I watch her hands. She has her own hands in her lap, fingers laced together, and she is still performing concern but underneath it something else is running. Impatience. Calculation. The quiet hum of a person who has a plan and is trying to figure out how close she is to executing it. Vanessa, I say. I want to ask you something and I want you to tell me the truth. Of course, Mom. When you came in this afternoon, I say. While you thought I was sleeping, what did you say to me? The silence that follows is very small and very loud at the same time. Her fingers tighten in her lap. Just slightly. Most people would not notice. I notice because I have known her hands her entire life. I held those hands when they were small enough to fit in my palm. I know every way they move. I just told you I loved you, she says. I told you to rest. I look at her. She looks at me. I let the silence sit there between us like a third person in the room. Tell me about the paperwork, I say. Another flicker. Faster this time. What paperwork? The paperwork you needed handled tonight. Before Nathaniel arrives. The color in her face shifts. It is subtle. The kind of thing you miss if you are not paying attention, and I have been paying attention to Vanessa's face for 51 years. I don't know what you mean, she says. You were on the phone, I say. This afternoon. In this room. She stands up. Not abruptly. Controlled. She smooths her skirt. She is buying herself 3 seconds to decide how to handle this, and I watch her decide. Mom, you were sleeping. You must have been dreaming. You were not well when they brought you in. The medication can make you hear things that... Sit down, Vanessa. She sits. I was not dreaming, I say. I heard your phone call. I heard what you said at the window. And I heard what you whispered in my ear before you left. She says nothing. Harrison called me 3 weeks ago, I say. Before he died. He told me he was meeting with Gideon. He told me he was making changes. Her expression does not change, but something behind her eyes does. Something goes very still back there. He gave me Gideon's number, I say. He said just in case. I called that number today. This afternoon after you left. Vanessa is sitting very straight now. Her hands are no longer folded. They are flat on her thighs, pressed down, like she is holding herself in her chair. Mom! He knew, I say. I keep my voice even. I keep it quiet. He knew about the account. He knew about the man. He knew about 18 months of hotel receipts. He knew all of it, Vanessa, and instead of confronting you, he went to his lawyer. And he fixed his estate so that everything he built was protected. She opens her mouth. The paperwork you are trying to rush through tonight, I say. It is already done. It was done 3 weeks ago. Whatever you think you are changing or claiming or processing, it does not matter. It is already settled. Vanessa stands up again. This time it is not controlled. He had no right, she says, and her voice comes out sharp and thin like a wire pulled too tight. That was our life. That was our money. I was his wife for 22 years. Yes, I say. You were. He cannot just cut me out. He cannot just decide. He did not cut you out, I say. Gideon told me exactly what is in the trust. You receive what you are entitled to under the law as his surviving spouse. That is not nothing, Vanessa. That is substantial. But the rest of it, the properties and the portfolio and everything Harrison built with his own hands before and after you married him, that is no longer yours to take. She is breathing fast now. Standing at the foot of my bed with her perfect hair and her careful clothes and her face finally showing what is underneath all of it. You, she says. And then she stops. And then she says it again. You. He left it to you. He left it in trust, I say. With me as the administrator. You are 76 years old. She says it like it is an insult. Like the number is a weapon she can point at me. You are in a hospital bed. What are you going to do with any of it? Exactly what Harrison would have wanted, I say. Starting with making sure Nathaniel has what he needs. Something crosses her face at his name. Something I cannot fully read. It is gone before I can catch it. Nathaniel, she says. Flat. Like the word tastes wrong. He arrives tomorrow morning, I say. Gideon will have filed everything by 8. I expect by the time Nathaniel gets to this hospital there will be nothing left for you to rush. She picks up her bag from the chair. Her hands are shaking slightly. Not from weakness. From the specific kind of rage that comes from a plan falling apart that you thought was airtight. I cannot believe this, she says. I cannot believe he did this. And I cannot believe you are sitting here taking his side when I am your daughter. You are my daughter, I say. You will always be my daughter. But Harrison was my family too. And he came to me because he trusted me. And I am not going to dishonor that trust because it is inconvenient for you. She walks to the door. She stops with her hand on the handle. You should know, she says without turning around, that I am going to contest this. Whatever he filed, whatever Gideon says, I am going to fight it. That is your right, I say. And I am going to win. I look at her back. My daughter. The little girl I brought home from the hospital 51 years ago. The one who learned to walk by pulling herself up on the edge of the coffee table. The one who cried at her father's funeral and held my hand so hard she left marks on my skin. You might, I say. Lawyers do unpredictable things and courts are complicated. You might find something to fight. But Vanessa, I want you to hear me. She turns around. Just slightly. Not enough to face me but enough to show me the side of her face. I have the phone calls, I say. Harrison's. From 3 weeks ago. I saved them when they came in and I have not deleted them. He told me things in those calls that you do not want in a courtroom. And Gideon has the documentation from the investigation Harrison commissioned. All of it. The account. The transfers. The hotel receipts. The name. She is very still. If you fight this in court, I say, all of that becomes public record. Every person who came to Harrison's funeral, every friend, every colleague, every person who respected him, they will all know. And Nathaniel will know. And whatever you think of me right now, I do not think that is what you want. The door opens. The door closes. She is gone. I lie back against the pillows. The machines beep their slow, steady beep. The hallway outside my room is quiet. Somewhere further down the hall a cart rolls past and someone laughs softly at the nurse's station, and the sounds of a working hospital carry on around me like water around a stone. I close my eyes. Not because I am pretending to sleep, because I am actually tired, and because I know that tomorrow is the day that everything changes and I need to be rested for it. Nathaniel arrives at 9:47 the next morning. I know this because Celeste pokes her head in at 9:48 and says your grandson is here, and her voice has a warmth to it that tells me she has already decided she likes him. Which does not surprise me because everyone who meets Nathaniel for the first time decides they like him before the conversation is finished. He fills the doorway when he walks in. He is tall like his uncle Harrison, with the same way of carrying himself, the same quality of stillness in a room. He has dark circles under his eyes from the flight and from grief, because unlike Vanessa, Nathaniel's grief is the real kind. The kind that sits in your face and does not care what it looks like. He comes to my bed and he takes my hand in both of his and he does not say anything for a moment. We just look at each other. Grandma Eleanor, he finally says. Sit down, baby, I say. He pulls the chair close and sits. He is still holding my hand. I got here as fast as I could, he says. I was on the first flight I could get on. I should have been here before the funeral. I should have been here the day he died. I should have. You are here now, I say. He presses his mouth together. He is trying not to cry and he is 29 years old and he looks so much like his uncle at that age that it makes something ache in my chest. How are you feeling? He asks. Like a woman who had a cardiac event and spent 5 days in a hospital bed, I say. But better today than yesterday. He almost smiles. Nathaniel, I say. I need to tell you some things. Some of them are going to be hard to hear. He looks at me steadily. Okay. Harrison came to me 3 weeks ago. He called me. He told me things about his marriage and his finances and his plans that I have been carrying since then. He trusted me with them because there was no one else he trusted enough. Nathaniel's jaw tightens. Vanessa. Some of what I have to tell you involves her, yes. He nods once. Slowly. So I tell him. Not everything, not the way Gideon told me, not with all the legal precision and document references. I tell him the way you tell someone who loved a person. I tell him about the account and the transfers in the investigation. I tell him about the updated trust. I tell him about yesterday afternoon, about Vanessa in this room while I lay with my eyes closed, about the phone call I heard and the words she whispered next to my ear. He listens without interrupting. His hand around mine gets tighter as I talk, but he does not speak until I am finished. Then he says, she was going to let you sleep through it. She was going to let you wake up and find everything already processed. Yes. And she thinks she is still going to fight it. She said as much on her way out last night. He is quiet for a moment. His eyes go to the window to the sky outside, the same parking lot Vanessa was looking down at when she made her phone call yesterday. Uncle Harrison knew about all of it, he says. Not a question. He knew, I say. And he did not say anything to her. He wanted it settled legally before he confronted her. He was trying to do it cleanly. And then he died before he could do either. Nathaniel looks back at me. He called me too, he says. About 2 weeks before he died. I thought it was just a check-in call. He asked how I was doing, how work was going, if I was seeing anyone. Normal stuff. But at the end of the call he said something that I thought was just him being him. He said, whatever happens, you remember that you are the best of us. I thought he just meant the family in general. I thought he was just being Uncle Harrison. I squeeze his hand. He meant it, I say. I know that now. We sit together for a moment. The machines beep. The cart rolls past in the hall again. Gideon is filing everything this morning, I say. By the time Vanessa gets a lawyer and makes any kind of move, the trust will be fully in place. I need you to know that Harrison thought of you. There is something in there for you. A property in particular that I think you should hear about directly from Gideon. Nathaniel shakes his head slowly. I don't care about the property, Grandma Eleanor. I know you don't, I say. That is exactly why Harrison left it to you. He laughs. It is a short, rough sound, the kind that comes out when you are laughing and grieving at the same time and they get tangled together on the way out. What do we do about Vanessa? He asks. We let her make her choices, I say. She is going to fight. She may hire someone very good. She may cause us a lot of trouble and a lot of expense. But Gideon is very good too, and Harrison made sure of that. And I have the recordings. The phone calls. Yes, 3 of them. Harrison called me every Thursday for 3 weeks. He was thorough. He was always thorough. Nathaniel runs his free hand over his face. He is exhausted and grieving and trying to hold all of this information in a mind that is already full of loss. You should rest, I say. I'm fine. You are not fine. You flew through the night and you buried your uncle 2 days ago, and you have not slept properly since before he died. Go to the hotel, Nathaniel. Sleep for a few hours. Come back this afternoon. Nothing is going to fall apart between now and then. Gideon has it handled and I am not going anywhere. He looks at me for a moment. Then he does something his uncle used to do. He turns my hand over and holds it palm up like he is reading something in it, and then he folds my fingers closed gently like he is giving something back to me. Okay, he says. A few hours. A few hours, I agree. He leaves at 10:15. Celeste comes in at 10:30 to check my monitors and tells me that a lawyer's office called the front desk asking about my condition, and she told them she could not give information to anyone who was not listed on my file. Good, I say. Should I add anyone to your file? She asks. Add Nathaniel, I say. No one else. She nods like this is a perfectly reasonable instruction, which in a hospital it is, and updates the file on her tablet and goes to her next patient. Gideon calls me at 11. Everything is filed. The trust is formally in place. He has already been contacted by an attorney representing Vanessa, who he says used a word he will not repeat to me but that I can probably guess. He says he is not concerned. He says Harrison's documentation is thorough enough to hold up against any challenge she can mount, and the recordings I have saved to my phone are additional protection that he would like copies of if I am willing. I am willing. I send them to the email address he gives me while I am still on the phone with him. He tells me he will be in touch and to take care of myself, and I tell him thank you for everything you did for Harrison, and he is quiet for a moment and then he says it was an honor, Mrs. Eleanor, he was one of the good ones, and I say yes he was, and we end the call. I put my phone down on the blanket beside me. I look at the ceiling. I think about Harrison standing in my kitchen 11 years ago, the week after Gerald died, washing dishes without being asked because he had noticed they were piling up and he did not say a word about it. Just put on the water and started washing, and I stood in the doorway watching him and thought, this one is real. I was right. He was real. And he made sure, even from the other side of whatever comes next, that the people he loved were protected. Vanessa arrives at the hospital at 2 in the afternoon. She does not come to my room first. I know this because Celeste checks on me at 2:15 and mentions that my daughter is speaking with someone at the nurse's station and has asked several questions about my medical status that Celeste declined to answer. At 2:20 Vanessa appears in my doorway. She looks different than she did last night. She is still put together, but the assembly is slightly off, the way a picture frame looks when it is not quite level. Something is tilted under the surface of her. She has her phone in her hand. My lawyer says what Harrison filed may not be valid, she says from the doorway. She does not come in. He says there are grounds to challenge. Your lawyer should speak to Gideon, I say. He already has. Then your lawyer already knows what Gideon has. She looks at me across the room. Her grip on the phone is tight. You have recordings, she says. Yes. Of Harrison. Yes. Mom. Her voice drops into something softer, something she believes sounds sincere. You have to understand what these last 2 years have been like. My marriage was not what people thought it was. Harrison was not. Be very careful, I say, about what you say next. She stops. Harrison is not here to defend himself, I say. He cannot speak for himself anymore. He was a good man, and you know he was a good man, and if you say otherwise I will tell you right now that I have 3 weeks of phone calls in which he described his marriage to me in considerable detail, and none of it reflects poorly on him. Vanessa is silent. Sit down, I say. She does not move. Vanessa. Sit down. She walks to the chair slowly. She sits on the edge of it like she might need to leave quickly. I look at my daughter. Really look at her. 51 years old. Tired underneath the careful assembly of her appearance. Something in her eyes that has been there for a long time that I have not wanted to look at directly. A kind of hunger that is never satisfied. A need that goes so deep I do not know when it started or how it grew so large. I am not your enemy, I say. She looks at her hands. I know you are angry, I say. I know you feel like Harrison betrayed you. I know you feel like I am taking something from you. But Vanessa, I want you to think very carefully about what you do next. Because you have choices right now. Real ones. And some of them will hurt you far more than what Harrison set up ever will. She is quiet. You can fight, I say. You can hire attorneys and go to court and drag everything into the open. And maybe you find something to challenge. But everything that Harrison documented, everything he saved, it all comes out. And you know what is in it. You know what that looks like. She presses her lips together. Or I say, you can come to me, not as an adversary, as my daughter, and we can have a real conversation about what you need and what is fair, and what can be arranged outside of a courtroom where nobody has to be destroyed. She looks up. You would do that, she says, flat, like she does not believe it. You are my daughter, I say. I have never stopped loving you, not for one day of your life. But love is not the same as letting you do wrong and calling it right. I cannot give you what Harrison chose not to give you. That is not mine to override. But I can be fair. If you let me. Silence sits between us. Outside the window the afternoon light has shifted. It is that particular gold that comes in the late afternoon in this part of the country, the kind that makes everything look slightly more real than it actually is. Vanessa puts her phone in her bag. She does not speak for a long time. Then she says, I don't know how we got here. I know, I say. I didn't want any of this to be like this. I believe that is partially true. I believe the part of her that was once the little girl pulling herself up on the coffee table did not want this. I believe the rest of her made choices anyway. Then let's find our way back, I say. Not to pretending, not to covering things up, but to something real. That is all I am asking. She looks at me for a long time. She does not say yes, but she does not say no either. And she stays in the chair. That for today is enough. Nathaniel comes back at 4. He looks better. He has slept and the grief is still on his face, but it is the kind you can carry now instead of the kind that carries you. He stops when he sees Vanessa in the chair. The room does something complicated for a moment. The three of us in it with all the grief and money and love and betrayal packed into the air between us. Then Nathaniel walks in and pulls the second chair to the other side of my bed and sits. We talk about Harrison. Small things first. His coffee always too strong. The time he drove through a snowstorm 3 hours to pick up Nathaniel from a broken car and said only, you should get that transmission looked at. The Sunday calls. Vanessa tells a story about their second anniversary, how she got them completely lost on a road trip and Harrison pulled over and laughed until he had tears on his face. She says, "That was the moment I knew he was different." And the way she says it, I believe her. That is the tragedy of Vanessa. Not that she did not love him, but that she loved him and still made the choices she made, and I do not know how a person holds both of those things at once. By 5, Vanessa stands to leave. She looks at me. She says she will call her lawyer tomorrow and tell him to call Gideon. That is all she promises. That is all I ask. At the door she looks at Nathaniel. She says, "He loved you. He talked about you all the time." Nathaniel says, "I know. He loved you too." She nods once sharp and she is gone. Nathaniel and I sit in the quiet. I tell him about the building and the trust. The one from Harrison's very first office, when he was 28 years old with one desk and a lamp and a phone. Harrison held on to it for 30 years. He always said it reminded him of what it felt like to start. He left it to Nathaniel because he thought Nathaniel was the right person to start something of his own. Nathaniel puts his head down. His shoulders move. He is crying the way men try not to cry, quietly with their heads down. I reach across and put my hand on his arm. We stay like that until the room goes from gold to gray. I am Eleanor. I am 76 years old. 4 days ago my daughter stood over my hospital bed and whispered, "Do not wake up," and then she walked away. I woke up, called Gideon. I told the truth. And tomorrow Nathaniel and I will begin the work of doing right by a man who trusted us with everything he built. Because I have been underestimated before. And I have always been the last one standing. Tell me in the comments below where you are from, and drop your city name. If you love your grandma, like this video, subscribe, and share it with one person today who needs to hear it. Because the women who held us when we were small enough to fit in their hands deserve to know that we remember.